Hey, I'm Chris Ralph, the professional prospector, and today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about metal detecting and using the SDC2300. Now, just a few years back, right behind me here, I actually dug a nice nugget that weighed almost 1/4 of an ounce, and people ask me, you know, what detector do I use? Well, I use a number of different detectors. I can't say that I just use one. Detectors are like a tool. You know, if you want to unloosen a bolt head, you don't want to use a saw. Or if you're wanting to you know, tighten up a screw, you don't want to use a hammer. You want to use the right tool for the job. If you're going to pound in a nail, you want a hammer. If you're going to cut a piece of wood, you want a saw. And so different metal detectors actually are designed differently and have a little bit different uses. And so if you ask me what detector I use the most, that's a question I can answer. Not what detector do I use. I use a number of them. What detector is my favorite? Well, my favorite is the one that's the right tool for the right place. But what detector do I use the most? Well, actually it's the SDC2300 by Minelab. I use it because I detect in places where there's significant mineralization, and one of the things about the 2300, it's a pulse induction type detector. And so let me tell you a little bit about the 2300, what its strengths are, what its weaknesses are. I'm not a metal detector dealer, so I can talk about strengths and weaknesses. No one metal detector is perfect for all different types of situations. Just like a tool, you know, there's no one tool that does everything. Different tools do different types of work. So the 2300, let's talk about it. It's a pulse induction detector, which means that it pulses out some energy into the ground, then actually switches off for a very short period of time, and then looks for any decaying metallic signals. See what happens when it puts energy into the ground. If there's a piece of metal, including like a nugget, but also trash or other things, that energy, and it's just basically electrical energy, it's a magnetic field that it pulses into the ground. The coil, you know, when you run electricity through a coil, it makes electromagnetic energy, and the magnetic energy goes into the ground, and if it happens to spy anything that's conductive, like a piece of metal, then that energy will energize that piece of metal, and it will also give off electromagnetic energy. So what happens is it pulses that energy into the ground, it waits a really brief time, and then looks for the electromagnetic energy coming off the other piece, with, you know, another piece of metal, a target in the ground. And of course, if there's no target, it doesn't get any response. But if there is a nugget or a nail or some other thing in the ground that's conductive, it will respond and let you know. So that's how a pulse induction detector works. Now, one of the things about pulse induction detectors is that because some things in the ground, especially like minerals that have magnetic properties, like magnetite, and to a lesser extent hematite and some other minerals, if they have a magnetic property, the fact that it switches off for a very brief time frame allows it not to see things like that, like magnetite, that kind of stuff. That's one of the differences between a VLF, like the Gold Bug, or the Gold Bug Pro, Gold Bug 2, or the Gold Monster by Minelab. Those things have a constant amount of energy. There's no switching off. And so they're more susceptible to mineralization in the soil and hot rocks. That's why pulse induction detectors ignore hot rocks so well. So it's good for areas with mineralized soil. And I told you I found a nice nugget just right over here. Well, this is an area that's pretty mineralized. There's a lot of magnetite, black sand in the soil. And so with a VLF here, they're pretty loud, right? But the ground is quieted down by a pulse induction machine. But one of the things about pulse induction machines that's negative is that they tend to, when they switch off, really small targets have lost their electromagnetic response. Like I say, remember I said that it pulses energy into the ground. If there's a magnetic target, or if there's an electronic, if there's a metallic target in the ground, then it also produces a signal coming back toward the metal detector. Well, with a VLF, it can see very small targets because it always has a certain amount of energy going into the ground. So it sees even small targets because small targets produce a smaller and shorter lasting response. Like when you put energy into the ground and the metal target responds, well, the smaller it is, the weaker that amount of response coming back and the shorter time it lasts. So small nuggets are not seen as well with pulse induction detectors because they the time that it switches off, puts energy into the ground, switches off for a brief time. Well, during that switch off time, really small targets decay all the energy, response energy that they have. So you have to have at least a little bit of a size nugget in order to respond. And one of the things that Minelab and other metal detector makers have done over the years is to improve the response of pulse induction machines so that they can see fairly small nuggets. But that's why the VLFs will see smaller gold, is because they don't have that switch off period. But the switch off period also allows them to ignore mineralization and hot rocks. So it's kind of a switch off, yes, it ignores the mineralization and hot rocks, but yes, it also fails or ignores really small gold or really small trash too. So one of the big advantage with the SDC2300 is that its switch off period is very, very, very short. And so it doesn't quite see nuggets as small as like a gold bug or a gold bug 2 or a gold monster, but it will see pretty small gold. I've found some really tiny gold with this detector, and it's good at that, but it at the same time ignores the mineralization. And that's why I use it. It has a kind of a medium-sized coil. This is an 8-inch coil. And the medium-sized coil allows it to punch a little bit deep. The larger your coil, the deeper you can see, but the smaller the gold that you're going to miss. In other words, a big coil will see a big nugget deep, and a small coil will see a small nugget, but only shallow. And so if you have a big coil on there, a really big coil, you may be able to see a big nugget deeper, but smaller nuggets near the surface, you may not see them at all. They won't respond. So with a coil like this, a medium-sized coil, it's able to see some pretty small gold, and it's able to punch down pretty deep. It's kind of a compromise. A big coil will definitely see deeper. If I use my GPZ7000 with a much bigger coil, it's going to punch down much deeper. Another pulse induction detector with a much bigger coil is going to be able to punch down deeper on bigger nuggets, but that they're not going to be able to see the really tiny stuff that this detector sees. Now, so that's the big advantage of this detector compared to other pulse induction machines and compared to VLFs, is that it can see some really, really small gold and yet ignore the hot rocks and mineralization in the ground. It doesn't have any kind of discrimination. So in areas with huge amounts of trash, it's a tough detector to use. Now it works well with, even if there's some trash, like a moderate amount, you'll have to dig the moderate amount of trash because there's no discrimination. But because of the monocoil, you can pinpoint things pretty quickly. And I will show you in a little bit some more about pinpointing. But in this coil, the sensitive part of it is right around the rim. It's all pretty much the same going around the rim. It's in a little bit, maybe a centimeter or a half an inch in from the absolute edge of the coil, but that's where the metal windings, the wire of this coil is located, and it wraps around a number of times. So when you pinpoint with this, and I'll show you a bit more about pinpointing later, the sensitive area is all the way around the coil, and you need to remember that when you're pinpointing. We'll talk about that in a minute. But because it's got a mono coil and it pinpoints pretty quick, if you have moderate amount of trash, you can dig the moderate amount of trash and get it out of the way, and then you know, hopefully find some gold in the same area if you've got mixed trash and gold. No detector is going to dig zero trash, because even a VLF with discrimination, it's not 100% accurate. So high amounts of trash, yeah, this is probably not a good choice. That's a disadvantage, no discrimination. But moderate to low amounts of trash, no problem. You're going to dig trash. You got to get used to that as a prospector with a metal detector. You're going to dig some trash. Some types of trash, even on a discriminator like lead, if you were discriminating with your VLF, the lead shows up as good, just the same as a Nugget would. So anyway, one of the things, how do you set up, what I want to talk about in this video is how do you set up the 2300 for using a gold. Now, one of the things about the 2300 is that it's super simple. You know, some detectors have 27,000 different adjustments. You can set this, you can set that, you can set the other thing, set another thing. You know, there are all these different adjustments. The 2300 is made to be simple. It basically only has a few adjustments. There's a sensitivity adjustment here. You can see I'm running mine about 4, but I usually run about 3 or 4 on the sensitivity. The factory recommended is actually 2. So they will have it quieted down. Running at 3 or 4 will make the detector a little bit noisy, but it'll make it a little bit more sensitive too. That's the choice on that. And then this is just off and on. You know, off, on, hey, that's pretty simple. So there's 2 adjustments there. This is where the headphones plug in. And one of the things about the headphones is that this is a very unusual plug. It's set up for underwater use. One of the other advantages of the SDC2300 is that it can be used underwater. And you can actually get in the water. It's waterproof, rated at waterproof to 10 feet. You want to make sure that the batteries that you use in the back of it, that this battery trap is well sealed and well closed, because it's this battery door that's most frequently the problem. If there's going to be water leakage, that's where it's going to be. It uses rechargeable batteries, and I have a couple of sets of rechargeable batteries, so I don't need to buy new batteries, but it's a standard C size cell battery. It uses 4 of them. And then the only other adjustments are this green button, which is reground. It does have a ground balance system. The ground balance system is on all the time, but if you suddenly step into an area with much noisier ground, you can hit the green button and it will ground balance again real quickly to whatever your new ground balance setting is. This is a noise reduction, and so if you're in an area where there's you know, maybe some power lines a little distance away, or maybe you've got jet airplanes flying over, some other cause of electromagnetic noise, hitting this button will the detector will go through a series of steps, select the best setting for quieting the detector down, and that will work. And then the only other adjustment here is just the volume, you know, the noise, the amount of loudness of the signal. And you know, whether you're using headphones, it does have an external speaker, so you don't have to use a headphone, but you can adjust the sound output, the loudness of the signal output with that. And that's the whole simple thing. That's just not a lot to it as far as adjustments. It's simple to use, easy to operate, They're not cheap. This detector sells for around $3,300 US, which, you know, some of you are going to say, hey, that's super expensive. Their detector's a lot more expensive, and you know, getting into prospecting for gold with a good metal detector is something that, you know, it's not cheap. So 3,300 bucks, maybe a little more depending on where you buy it. I love my detector. I've used this all over the place. Let's go ahead and dig a few targets now, and I'll show you a little bit more about pinpointing. Okay, I have a target here in front of me. You can certainly hear that, okay? One of the things I wanted to say about pinpointing is that people tend to just kind of shove the thing, and the problem is, like, the target is right here, but look, I can shove, and if I just am near it, then I think the target is here instead of it's actually there. Or I could be over to the side, and then I think the target's over here. One of the tricks with pinpointing for a monocoil is you have to get back away from the target, and then you swing from side to side. Now you get a line. Basically you've established a line like this, forward and back, that in the line of my foot and my leg is where the target is. But you still don't know exactly where it is. So what you need to do is step to the side and get away from the target, and then come approach it from the side. Okay, now with that you establish a line going this way. So now you have a line going this way and a line going that way, and that, where they cross, X marks the spot. That's exactly where the target is. So now you know how to pinpoint with a mono coil, because you need to make that cross pattern like this. You just can't go forward and like I say, a lot of people just shove their coil toward the target and think that's a good way of pinpointing. It's not. You really have to make that cross. And the truth is, the more accurately you pinpoint, the more quickly you can get the target out of the ground. And if it's not gold, move on to the next target. And the more time you spend hunting around trying, where's that target, you know, digging and digging, you dig bigger holes, it takes more time to find the target, and you have less time that you're actually looking for gold. And you know, if two guys go out to the same area and one guy digs 50 targets in a day and the next guy digs 10 targets in a day, the guy who goes to the same area and digs 50 is going to get more gold. It's just a fact. So accurate pinpointing is an important secret. Actually, I have a video on the secrets of pinpointing, and if you're interested in pinpointing, you should watch that video. Now, if you're interested also in gaining the skills of being a better prospector, finding more gold, how to find gold with a metal detector like the SDC2300, we've talked about how to set it up for gold, but the skill of finding gold really is not just in the metal detector, it's in the being able to go out and find it. The detector can only tell you when you go over a target. So if you're interested in gaining those skills, I wrote a book about that, and I'm going to tell you a little bit more about my book right now. So let me tell you a little bit more about my book. It's called Fistful of Gold, and I wrote it because I want you to be able to go out and find for yourself fistful of gold. And you can see that it's an encyclopedia with all kinds of information, pictures, and that sort of thing. It's not in color, but color would have cost me a lot more to have printed, and so the book would have cost a lot more. It's for sale on Amazon, and you can pick it up. I'll put a link in the description below. I also serve as the editor for a prospecting magazine. It's ICMJ's Prospecting and Mining Journal. And honestly, you should check that out. We got stories and information, legal stuff, everything you know to increase your skills as a prospector. I write articles in this every month, and a lot of other very experienced prospectors contribute to the magazine as well. So check the magazine out. Also, I have a website, and the website is at NevadaOutbackGems.com. I'll put a link for it in the description below, but there's gobs of information there that you will find useful in your prospecting efforts. Finally, I want to say that I really appreciate your comments and thoughts, and even positive criticism. Don't come on there and just toss out insults, because I'll just delete your comments. But if you've got helpful things to say and questions to ask, do write and put those in the comments, because I answer my comments to people, and you'll hear from me in responding to you. So if you've enjoyed this video and you like what you see and you're interested in finding out more, well then sign up, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so they'll let you know when I post new videos. And like it and share it if again you see stuff that you really are excited about. And I'll be coming out with lots more new videos, and so we'll see you again real soon.